Alright, so we are back from a very short break where we're going to talk about the Oilers and talk about their golf season.
Yeah.
I don't mean golf season, but they're probably going to have a phenomenal one because they started so soon compared to some of the other teams.
Well, they've had so much more experience than the rest of the crew, so they're probably way ahead of the pack. Yeah, it was a somber end of the season. Obviously I don't think anybody wanted them to finish the way they did. I think they only won 2 of their last 13 games or 2 of their last 12 games or something like that. Just not very good for publicity, obviously, but I think as a group the Oilers need to figure out a way to win more games and win more of those close games, those games where it just seems like you're not going to be able to win them, but you still have to keep going, still have to throw pucks to the net.
Yeah.
Still got to try, and I don't think there was enough of that this season.
And with that, I feel like that even though the Oilers are a fairly strong team, you just don't have the intensity once they're up a couple goals. They're just, you know what, we're up 3-1, we might as well kind of, not necessarily take it real easy, but don't play like we did in the first period that got us those 3 goals.
Yeah.
And I feel that needs to change.
Yeah, you could argue that that's definitely some part of the problem. There was a lot of cases this season where they got up by a couple goals and they just packed it in and said, okay, we've got this game, and they didn't. And that's got to change. The other thing that's got to change is at the beginning of the season, I think they fixed it by the end of the season, but at the beginning of the season they had very slow starts.
Yeah.
They weren't able to, they let the other team score, and they had to come from behind. They were very good at coming from behind, but, that's what she said, but that's not what you want from your team. That's not what you want from any team. So
yeah.
I think they got to work on that. They definitely started to do a lot better. I think by the end of the season they were giving the Vancouver Canucks all they could handle. Taylor Hall with a hat trick. They get 4 goals in about 7 minutes or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
What more can you ask for there?
It was unreal.
Yeah, but I think just like any other season, especially the last couple seasons, a lot of great bright spots. I think that Vancouver game was a very good bright spot. The way they just kept scoring goals. The one that really
showed them they could actually do it, right?
And the one that really stuck out to me was the 2 games against Calgary late in the season, where the one game they score on the first 3 shots of the game on Hockey Night in Canada, and then they win that game. Then they go to Calgary the next night or in a couple of nights, and they basically made the Calgary Flames look like a peewee team.
Yeah.
Oh, they were all over them, and afterwards they held a playoff spot for that short amount of time. But after that, it just went downhill, and they just lost their focus. I think a lack of playoff experience come down that crunch time. Yeah. They had one guy on their team on their active roster that had a Stanley Cup championship, and that was Nikolai Khabibulin, their backup goaltender.
Yeah, the backup goaltender, which is surprising because last year he was actually the starting goaltender.
Well,
and he didn't have a bad season, but Dubnyk just got the few times where to play where Khabibulin had a few incidences where he just wasn't able to play. He got injured, and even though was it Ralph Kruger last year?
No, it was Tom Brady last year.
Yeah, it was Tom Brady last year. He realized that, holy shit, we actually have kind of a goaltender in the woods, right? You don't realize with the strength that Khabibulin has that you have a prospect goalie.
Yeah. I think they had an idea in the beginning of the season beginning of last season, I should say, when Devan Dubnyk was actually named starting goaltender for the opening night. Yeah. Which I think raised a lot of eyebrows just because they figured, well, Nikolai Khabibulin will be starting this season, but then next season that'll be when Devan Dubnyk shines.
Yeah.
But when they made that step right away, that was kind of a signal that now Dubnyk is going to be the guy, and Nikolai Khabibulin ended up having a very solid start to the season, trended off once the New Year hit, and this season was sort of similar. He did play a lot better, given that he wasn't going to start every night. What I didn't agree with some nights was when Ralph Kruger decided to use Khabibulin on back-to-back nights. That, to me, I just didn't really like that. He did that against Columbus in the one game, and Dubnyk came in, and Dubnyk ended up winning the game for him.
Yeah.
So I think that just tells you can't. I don't think you could have started a 40-year-old goaltender of Nikolai Khabibulin's stature on back-to-back nights.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I'm not the coach, so I think that there was a lot of good signs. They have a lot of work to do. We'll get to the general manager in a minute, but before we do that, let's maybe talk about who I think is a very quality Rookie of the Year candidate, Nail Yakapov, who we talked about him before he was our player of the week back on our first show.
Yeah.
And we talked about him just a little bit and said you just got to shoot the puck a bit more.
And how he's such a raw player, and once he starts doing that, he's going to be a phenomenal player. And guess what, everyone?
Yeah. He started shooting the puck. He started being a... You know what? But what I liked a lot about his last couple games wasn't just the way he scored goals. It was the way he celebrated the goals. It wasn't sliding across the ice, even though that was fantastic at that time in the season. But it was the one time he just kissed the logo on his jersey and gave a salute to the crowd. You know, he can play on my team anytime, Nail Yakapov. I think he's going to be very good. The other thing I like about him is he started to show that he can play defense. There was a play he made, I can't remember against the team, but it was a bad change by the teams, and he came off the bench, and he came flying down, he stuck his stick out and made took away a glorious chance for the other team to score.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have to make that play, but he did, and I think that just shows that the effort that he puts into every single game, and I think he's a quality Calder candidate. I don't think he'll win it just because it's such a wide open race this year. I have no idea who's going to win it. You can make the case for about 5 or 6 guys. You know, Brendan Gallagher of Montreal is getting a lot of votes. You could say Jonas Brodin, the young defenseman from Minnesota. Jonathan Huberdeau of the Florida Panthers has gotten a few considerations as well. You know, there's still Brandon Saad of the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, he gets. I think he's a bit of a biased candidate just because he plays with Jonathan Taves. But that's just me.
Yeah.
So you know, I think Nail Yakapov has a very solid chance when you lead the all rookies in goals and points. That to me screams a Calder candidate in my opinion. But
and
we'll
even
see.
though I'm not hating on Nail Yakapov, there's one play I saw where he plays right wing. Right wing? Yeah, I was going to say depending on which way you look. It's right wing. And I saw him on his far side, so it'd be like on the left-hand side of the goalie. Like he was playing like a left D point. And like he was just kind of floating in there, and then he kind of floated up. And I just kind of, like, I was looking like...
Was this early in the season?
No, it was just before, like, a few games before they won their game in, like, against Vancouver.
Oh, was it? Okay,
yeah.
that was like mid-season, yeah. No, like, even then, he was still starting to learn the game.
Yeah.
What I'm not really fond of with him is he likes to take changes at really awkward times.
Just like to make
when he's on the other side of the ice and the puck is going in your end, that's not really a great time to change. But you know what? He's learning, and I like that. I think he's got the gumption enough that he can actually go to get in the areas and know where to be once he knows what to do defensively. I think that's going to be good.
The nice thing, too, he's working with a bunch of veterans that know what they're doing. They're working with Alisensky, Sean Horkoff, Ryan Smith, all these fairly strong forward players that have been playing the game since they've been Nail Yakupov's age.
Yeah.
And they know exactly what to do, when to do it, and they're not going to rip on him and give him a hard time. They'll be like, you know what, man? Like, just in between shifts, like, if one's coming off and one's going on, they'll be like, you know what, man? Don't go behind the net when this happens, or when this happens. And I think Nail Yakapov actually takes that stuff to heart, and he's just, like, I got to work on that, and I love his determination.
Yeah, I definitely do. We were going to talk about the management change. We're going to be a little bit short on time. Maybe we should take a whole segment for that. I think that would be a good
we can probably take a whole segment. We can probably keep talking about Nail Yakapov if you want until, like, for another minute or so. Just because I kind of want to just say, even though, like, I just said I love his determination, there was one practice where he was the last person on the ice with Magnus Pjarvi just working on his one-timers. We all know he has phenomenal, magnificent one-timers, but he's still out practicing them. Like, all these veterans and people you'd expect to be on the ice last have basically gotten off and just about gotten home at that point.
Yeah.
And I read it on Twitter, nailed Yakapov still on the ice 40 minutes later. Like, that is some determination that the player has to be able to push. Well, not necessarily push, but to stay on the ice that long.
This kid is going to be good. And I think that he found something in the last 10 to 12 games where he just said, I think I figured this game out, or I think I can feel comfortable in this game. And I think next season, if as long as he stays healthy, I don't think he's playing in the World Championships, which is surprising to me. But I think if he can stay healthy through everything else, he can come back in training camp, just more strong than he was, faster than he was, with a better shot than he has. I think this guy in a full 82 game season, I don't see a reason why he can't score 40 goals next year. And I'm serious when I say that. He's just going to be a sophomore. He's going to be my age. Well, actually, no, he's going to be a lot younger than me.
He's going to be my age.
Yeah, he's going to be 20. I believe he's going to be 20 by some point next year. And I think he can score 40 goals. He could be another Alex Ovechkin. Who knows? Yeah. I think he's got a lot more character than Alex Ovechkin does. I like the fact that he has a very solid work ethic. And you know what? I think the fact that he's such a character, when you talk to him, even though he can't speak much English, he still has a very good, you look at him on Twitter with all the brackets and the smiley faces, and it's just like, what does that mean? Oh, it just means I'm happy. Oh, fantastic.
12 semicolons and 6 forward brackets.
Yeah, just remember, for all you ladies, if there is a colon and a star, that's his phrase for a kiss.
Is that what it means?
That's what it means. That's what that means. There was something on EdmontonOilers.com where he was given different stuff for what everything meant, and that's what he was telling me, or that's what not me, but he was telling everybody.
Well, he told you he gave you a kiss.
Yeah, he gave me a kiss. Yeah, exactly. That's about it. But no, you know what? I picked Yakapov for the Calder if I had a vote in it, but obviously I don't.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, he's definitely going to be. I would put him. Everybody was talking about. Well, we don't know. Is Yakapov going to be in that Jordan Eberle, Taylor Hall, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins group that we were all talking about? To me, I think he is. I think this season he proved that he can be in that group.
I think with those players, there's going to be the bracket of average players, the bracket of Taylor Hall, Eberle, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins that are just above them. And then I have a feeling that there's going to be that spot where there's that Ovechkin where he's just sitting at the top with Sidney Crosby. I think Yakapov is going to be at that spot.
You think so?
I think so.
You think so?
Even though it may not be in the next year.
Yeah, no, it'll take
eventually.
time. Of course, it'll take time. And you know what? As much as everybody really hounded on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins this year, he had a bit of shoulder issue, and it was kind of similar to what Taylor Hall and actually Sean Horkoff had a couple of years ago. And he's going to get that cleared up. Hopefully, he'll be ready. He'll probably be ready by November. They say he'll be ready for training camp. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but we'll see. Yeah. And but I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to be. I think his overall game is too good to go unnoticed. I don't know if he can be like they compared him to Pavel Datsyuk. I don't think he has as much skill as Pavel Datsyuk. I think he could be maybe more of in not maybe a leadership role, but in a role similar to Jonathan Toews in the fact that he can play both position or both zones, offensive and defensive. Yeah. He's a very good distributor of the puck, and he can still score goals. And I think that's what Jonathan Toews does. Jonathan Toews does it a lot more with the serious captain in him. But I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can be a player that can play well both ways. He can be a number one center, play power play, kill penalties, and I think that's what Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can be. And I don't think anybody really else sees that, because everybody I talk to, when they talk about which one of the big 5 or 6, depending how many you want to put it, Hall, Nugent-Hopkins, Eberle, Yakapov, and Schultz. Which one of those guys would you trade? And
that's a hard list to break down.
And everybody, from what I say, everybody tells me, you got to trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And I look at them with a real stupid face and I say, that is the last guy you trade, because how often do number one centers flop on your doorstep? You know,
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to start blaming Ryan Nugent-Hopkins because he didn't have a very good 48-game season? Are you kidding me?
Then
this is a splash in the pan compared to what he's going to be able to do. He is 20 years old.
Last year, if we're going by that, last year we should have gotten rid of Taylor Hall, even though he's not a centerman. But
yeah,
he just had a shitty season because he busted up his ankle and kind of got a shoulder injury,
yep.
and he didn't have a very long season because of these other things. And we're